must be wrong. The streets are flooded every time I look down at my palm.
Real name Anthony B. Daniels. The B stands for Bernard.
All right.
That. Stage name Moose Harris.
Right.
I consider myself a professional freelancer. Music, artist, DJ, radio show host, a little journalism in me, event facilitator. Mm-hmm. Just a whole lot of well-roundedness in reference towards the music game.
Sure. The writing, any of that music related, or is that different?
No, the writing has always been music related. I've spent my time with different entities, doing what you're doing here, interviewing people and writing stories, Offbeat Magazine in New Orleans, The Antidote, Baton Rouge,
great.
What have you, my own podcast thing. So it's a combination of just writing stuff as it comes.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You grew up in Lafayette? You were born and raised in Lafayette?
No, actually born and raised in New Iberia, Louisiana. Shout out to the B-Town.
Right.
For those who don't know, about 20 miles southeast of Lafayette.
Okay.
In the heart of here in Cajun country is where all the great hot sauce comes from. Mm-hmm. So shout out to Tabasco and Louisiana Red Dot.
Yes, sir.
Sugarcane, agriculture, suburban small town.
Yeah.
New Orleans equivalent would be like growing up in somewhere in between like Kenner and Laplace would be that type of equivalency.
Not as densely populated for sure.
No, not at all. No, not at all. Like New Iberia, this height might have been like 30,000.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's under that now. So,
what was like the center of town for you?
The center, it wasn't necessarily the center of town per se, but the center of activity was either one of three things. It was either church related, directly school related, or city league event related. Because church, Mount Calvary Baptist Church in New Iberia. New Iberia Senior High School was the big high school. It was the only public high school in New Iberia at the time. Now we have Westgate and a couple other private ones. And the other thing would be like league things, playing little league sports or being involved in 4-H or things, Sugarcane Festival, so on. So that would be the quintessential center of town in reference towards for me. I mean, there's Main Street, Boulogne Plaza on the Bayou Teche. There's Hopkins Street. The other side of town, Amador is where people go towards shopping and consumerism and all that stuff now. But yeah, that's usually more of the center. It was more of what the activities or what was going on versus where it was going on.
Yeah. And your school coming up was close to the center of town, I would imagine?
New Iberia was just big enough to where schools could be spread out. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still a quote-unquote country town. So New Iberia Senior High was actually on the opposite end of New Iberia from where I grew up.
Okay.
So neighborhood elementary school, got to go a little further out in the outskirts for the middle school. And this is back then when New Iberia had New Iberia Freshman High. It's Westgate now.
Okay.
This time period where the freshmen had their own high school of 1,000 freshmen.
Right, so like I had middle school was basically preceding that. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Elementary school, kindergarten to 6th grade, middle school 7th and 8th grade, freshman high is 9th grade, and then New Iberia Senior High was 10th, 11th, and 12th. So it was all spread out in different aspects. I guess that's how time went, and they just adapted.
So I can imagine where music came in through those avenues, but what about like back at your house when you were a kid? Did you have musicians around you, or did
my parents both played? Situations where you'll have older adults or older generations, they'll get involved in something, but it really wasn't necessarily a part of their life, but they was involved in it.
It wasn't a focal point,
right? And then you'll have the following generation who will take that one aspect and absolutely totally run with it.
Sure.
Well, that's me when it comes to music. Because both my parents did, the typical marching band type of things in school, played saxophone, what may have you, but they never carried it on beyond that stereotypical, I'm a part of school band type of thing.
Right.
Whereas me, as soon as I learned what music was, that was it. We're going.
What about church for them? Did they attend church?
My mom was the church goer, and there was a lot of music. Like I said, Mount Calvary Baptist Church in New Iberia.
Yeah. So
there was a lot of music in it. But once again, talking about small towns, so it was more country, more traditional in a sense,
sure,
I guess, versus say somewhere in New Orleans where, you know, you'll get the big city, some experimentation will come in and it'll be, you know, super church,
right,
whatever. So my musical background comes more so from the music collections that my parents had.
Okay.
Where 8 tracks and
I was about
12
to ask, man.
Oh yeah, I'm old enough to have gone through all that. I'm old enough to have gone through 8 tracks.
Dude, I got 100 of them at my house
12
right now.
inch,
Dude.
45s, cassettes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I grew up. A lot of Motown stacks.
Tangible love.
Yeah, and you know, just enough tie-ins of the, you know, just a little bit of Bob Marley right here.
Okay.
Just a little bit of Bob James and Grover Washington to take care of the jazz stuff. You know, a lot of the average white band, Motown stacks, Isaac Hayes, Marvin Gaye, James Brown, Funkadelic. I'll never forget the first time I ever heard One Nation Under a Groove. That's my theme song. That's
okay.
That's the song that's gonna be playing when they send me down.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Funkadelic's One Nation Under a Groove. So I learned from that aspect, and plus being an 80s baby, just so happens I'm slightly older than MTV, so I got that whole experience. Soul Train. I'll even go to some of the smaller ones like a Solid Gold or a Dance Party USA for those who may or may not even remember what those are. That was all the things that caught my attention. The radio stuff came out here in Lafayette, out of Lafayette, and spreads out to all of Acadiana. So, you know, Dr. Boogie on KFXZ 106.3, KJCB 77 AM, you know, just all those types of things. And plus here, being in Lafayette, we have that Zydeco element that most other places don't have.
Right.
You know, I've always attributed Zydeco to be the Acadiana Cajun country equivalent of like brass band music in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Because it's specific to that area, developed in that area.
It's a mainstay in this area.
It's a signature in that area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a lot of things. Not surprisingly, I guess because of generations or what may have you, hip hop specifically like came later on to me. Like I grew up playing instruments and singing.
How old are you?
I'm 44.
Okay.
You know,
we're about the same. Yeah, I can attest for our generation some of the things that we saw that were firsts that became staples.
Yeah,
worldwide hip hop.
We're probably the most complete. I tell younger guys this all the time. We're probably the most complete generation musically ever, because until something else beyond like hip hop or beyond just rapping or whatever form of singing comes along, by the time we were 10, we had access to every single form of musical presentation that there can be.
It's true.
You know, our parents didn't, because they didn't really have hip hop.
Right.
You know, our grandparents really didn't, because they really didn't have rock and roll until they were like 30. You know, or something like that.
It's true.
You
Their
know,
lives were incomplete.
us, you know, we have access to R&B, jazz, new wave, punk, rock, all that stuff. You know, like I said, I'm 44, so we're talking about by the time 1986 came around, I had access to all that.
Yeah.
In the mainstay. So it's that type of combination of being a part of that generation where, you know, the MTV generation, and having just enough of parents who listen to good music that I dig.
Yeah, I believe it. And you know, I feel like still being there for the tangible product, being able to see the sleeves and read the liner notes and things. I feel like music was delivered with more of an impact than now, because now they're just looking for music videos, but that doesn't really tell a complete story. If you can read about what happened while recording this album or see pictures at the same time of them on stage, then you can get a fuller picture of the personality of the group, you know? It's
a give and take, because back then you have all the information in the sleeves, the liner notes, and what may have you, but it didn't necessarily come from the band. It came from the company behind the band.
Yeah.
Now today you can get all the information you want from the artist, but it's coming from the artist.
Yeah.
So for better or for worse, it's coming from the artist.
Good point.
You know?
Yeah. So what you said the music bug hit you. In what form did you first participate?
All of it. Like I remember the first time I saw the album cover for Off the Wall.
Okay.
You know, I'm probably like 2 years old. You know, Off the Wall came out the year before I was born, so this is probably like 82. And I was like, I recognize that face, that's Michael Jackson, but why does he have an afro? Because we're talking about, you know, we're in Thriller Michael Jackson by now with the Jerry curl and everything.
Okay.
Why does he have an afro? Like,
that's right.
You know, didn't understand the concept of aging or anything like that. Or like, you know, Quincy Jones, the dude. You know, I remember riding around with my aunt and on her little Panasonic boombox cassette player playing the dude. I started singing in church at like 3 years old. You know, first time I was ever on the radio for any reason, I was like 7. You know, first time I was on TV for anything news-wise, I was like 6 or 7. So like it all hit early, all at the same time, and I want to try to figure out how to do what I'm seeing, how to do what I'm hearing. Like, and we're not talking about just making music. By the time I'm 8, 9 years old, I'm trying to figure out tour dates. Just to go forth. Like I probably have at my parents' house probably old notebooks right now from when I was at my parents' house and my grandparents' house, and you know, it might be March now, but in August I'm going to be in LA, and the next tour stop. Okay, let's see. By September I might be able to get overseas. I don't know where Tokyo, Japan is, but I'm going. Yeah. You know, like this whole thing has just been going that far back. So the whole entire music, I guess you would call it music industry bug, hit me real early and real quick, and I'm like, yeah, this right here. I gotta ask you real quick because you stuck it in my head. Who was one of the contributors on The Dude? Was it? It wasn't Al Jarreau. It wasn't James. Oh, you're talking about he had his guitar player, George Benson. Okay, George Benson. There was a singer that came to mind, and I can't remember. Anyway, it stuck in my head. George Benson, Jeffrey Osborne. Yeah. Jeffrey Osborne. Thank you. That's a good album. I got that on wax, by the way. Yeah. Okay, so you're a small child and you're inventing these tours, these world tours. What did you think at the time? Not what it take to make that happen, but what did you think being an artist was composed of? What did you think they did? And I asked that because your parents musically participated, but it wasn't a focal point, like you said. So you were being impacted by these records and tapes and what we saw on TV and things of that nature. They're not always where you can reach out and touch them physically. You don't know these people. They're like characters. Right. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. To make them real people in our minds as children there's a gap right there. You don't understand how to get from A to B. So that's why I asked, what was in your mind to make you think that was touchable? Believe it or not, I think I thought about it then kind of like the same way I think about it today. You go in, you record the music, you manufacture the music somehow so other people can hear it. Somehow or another it gets to the radio, somehow or another it gets into stores where people can buy it. And then you go on the road and you perform it for people to come see you again. And then once that runs out, you start the process all over again. That's really what I always thought it was, because that's what I saw growing up, okay? They did an album. Now they're performing on Soul Train because they just did an album. Like, it was literally that specific for me. It was like, okay, make an album. That's go on TV, cool. Go on concerts, do shows places, come back home, make another album. But it's interesting because you were storing these presences in your mind and making the connection kind of as an evolution. Yeah, that always seemed like a process. Like I said, I go through that today. I have too many conversations with people that, okay, you got this music, but where are you booking yourself? Like, where are you doing shows at? Do you want to get outside of just like Lafayette or Baton Rouge doing stuff? And because that's the same process I probably had in like 1984 about it. Sure. What about any music magazines were you picking up as a kid? No, I didn't. To be honest with you, I didn't know the concept of music magazines. You know how you could know of something but not really know it. So like going to the grocery store, magazine section, I might have seen Tiger Beat and Ride On, but it never fully registered the concept of music magazine. That's what that is to me, because I'm a part of that initial visual, MTV or audio, radio. I never thought about reading the music. I always thought about either seeing it or listening to it. Yeah. So I knew they existed, but it never fully registered. Oh, music magazine, like, oh yeah, like, that's funny. You read articles in there and read more about the people. No, I never thought about it that way. So how did you choose to participate? First off, I got to leave in today because my problem is that I want to participate in it all. Sure. And it's been a lifelong thing. So like one of the greatest things that ever happened to me was the discovery of a cassette recorder. I had an aunt that my mom's side of the family are all teachers. My dad's side of the family is all military or veterans or what may have you. So my mother's oldest sister, she had a cassette recorder. She was a special ed teacher, what may have you. Just simple, back in the day, Sears, whatever, cassette recorder. Yeah, you know, one of them rectangular size ones. Not even the boombox, just a regular rectangular with the record play.
About,
yeah, 5
about
buttons.
This long, yeah.
Speaker at the top, cassette at the bottom, yeah.
Little slide out handle.
Yeah, desk drawer thing, yeah. And I think I borrowed it one day, and I think I ended up borrowing it from her for like 5-6 years.
Right. Straight through.
And so immediately I'm already looking at the situation of being the artist that's going to be on the cassette, but I'm also looking at it from being the person who's recording the cassette.
Sure.
So that's where the studio and engineering aspect comes in.
Yeah.
You know, I already dig radio, already like talking and being around people. So now I know that, okay, I'm the person that's going to be on the recording. I'm the person doing the recording. Well, why can I not be the DJ that's playing it on the radio too?
Sure.
So now, instead of just that one cassette, fast forward a couple of years, now I'm 9 or 10 with the double cassette deck with the record player on top or what may have you.
Come on, you had the record player on top?
Oh, yeah. Man, Sam's Wholesale, 1989, for real.
That's official.
Yeah. So I got the cassette, I got the 2 double decks cassettes, the record player on top, so now I can record the song from the album to the cassette.
Yes.
I can do the auxiliary towards going to cassette using that. So now I'm the person I'm one of the artists that's recording on the cassette. I'm the person doing the cassette, and now I'm the DJ presenting out the music to whatever. So the whole thing of it all has always been together for me from the jump.
So what's Artist Anthony doing now?
A lot of things that are paying attention. A lot of MTV stuff. Now that I think about it in hindsight, because MTV was where I could listen to, you know, I could get Michael Jackson and Prince on the R&B side, but then I could also get Wham and Talking Heads and Thompson Twins, whatever, on the new wave side.
Okay, so you were more of a curator then?
Yeah, okay. Facilitating, curating, whatever. Like, it's just, that's, you know, I hadn't really started writing anything myself yet.
That's what I was getting at.
So yeah, I was my own cover band.
Gotcha.
Really. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Just going through a lot of songs I was hearing on the radio and MTV, and just, yeah, I want to do that song. Because once again, without even knowing it, I knew that bands did other people's songs.
Sure.
I just never knew how deep, until like I was a full-fledged adult, I never knew how deep that rabbit hole is of people doing covers of other songs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I mean, for instance, you know, Fat Boys, Beat Boys, Wipeout came out in the 80s. Well, I knew enough that song originally came out in like 1950 or whatever, because it's surfing and
you knew
whatever.
That.
Well, generally speaking, I couldn't give you the exact year, but I mean,
no, not the year, but you knew that was a concept that was recreated, basically a rewrite.
I'll tell you how I thought about it. Well, okay, if I'm watching the Flintstones, and I know the Flintstones was made before I was born, and the Flintstones are talking about doo-wop and surfing and whatever else, and then this song Wipeout is associated with that, well, it must have from that same time period that the cartoon came out.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now why do they have a new version of it here in the 80s? Well, they're redoing the song. So,
your brain was on fire, bro. I wasn't making those assimilations at all.
All over the place. The fact, like, the way that I think about a lot of things now started a long time ago.
Sure.
In reference to the process. So, like, you know, I knew that people were doing other people's songs, you know, so now that I have all these pieces in place in my bedroom, my room to myself, me and the stuffed animals or whatever, why can't I do that too? So, you know, Timex Social Club, Lean on Me. I did a lot on cassette back then,
yeah,
because that song jammed.
Dude, I still got I got one more brick left of blanks, Max L, at my house right now. So what was the destination of these finished projects of yours?
Whoever had a cassette player in their car.
Yeah.
That was the finished project. It didn't matter if it was my parents' vehicles, aunts, friends. The whole bottom line concept is that I want to hear myself doing musical stuff on the radio, and the best way I knew how to do it was recording the cassette, put in a cassette player, and I get to hear myself while we're driving around or whatever.
See, that was it. That was going to be my next question. Were you emceeing while you putting the songs on there? Are you coming up on the mic and saying anything?
I'm doing the whole thing. I'm doing the whole radio station. Radio station would have been a game for me. Like in the same way people did water fights and hide and go seek or what have you.
Yeah.
Like, so I knew from, like I said, listening to the Dr. Boogies of the world or what may have you. Okay, you play a song or two, and you come in and say something about the song or whatever, and then play another one. You come in and say something about that, or okay, well, they have news that show up every now and then on the radio. So let me throw in some news or weather, whatever.
That's awesome.
Type something, And oh wait, they have sports that comes on the radio too. So let me go outside, gather my friends together like we normally play football in the field or what may have you.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give the play-by-play while we're playing or while they're playing or whatever.
Yeah.
That this is all stuff by the time I'm like 10. That's happening.
That's funny.
On my street. So I always knew about the whole process of it as much as I can. I'm gonna do everything that I see other people are doing or hearing about. Okay, you need that. Well, I'm gonna do that.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that's the first thing that kids do is emulate their surroundings. At first, their parents and then their friends and things of that nature. Were your friends in the neighborhood looking at you cross because maybe a few of them didn't get what you were trying to do?
If they did, they never said it, but I suspect that it happened because I was that guy. I was that broadcasting person. I was the one who always tried to both organize and delegate towards it. So like while friends didn't necessarily help me with that type of stuff, I had friends who all ended up on all these recordings because,
by proxy.
Yeah, just by proxy, they end up on a recording or something because you may sing in a church choir with me, so you already know how it gets down with it musically, how much I like it. Well, hey, let's record this. And we record something, and now I have it to play back on a radio-esque version of it some other time later, which actually happened.
Those were involved, man. I was gonna say I think we all made mixtapes as a kid, but that took it a step further for sure.
And the crazy thing is, I knew nothing about mixtapes.
Yeah.
Like I knew the concept of recording music off the radio, but I knew it from the perspective of I needed material for the radio thing that I wanted to do. It was like, okay, so I'm gonna take these songs off the radio. I'm gonna record some things myself. I'm gonna get every now and then get my friends involved. I got at least albums and combine that over to a blank cassette of 30, 45 minutes that I could listen to whenever my mom, my grandmother want to drive to Baton Rouge to go shopping.
Yep.
That was the whole thing of it. It wasn't even money or nothing like that. That was the whole world of my approach back in the 80s. What
was the next step for you? Was there a different venture altogether?
The next step, to be honest with you, the next step of it was money. Was the money aspect, because from childhood to teenage time, the situation was about the same. I'm in New Iberia. I love music. I want to do music. I want to start trying to find other people to actually do it with. And New Iberia isn't necessarily a big enough town to where you could say, oh, you run into classmates who started a band. Nah, I'd say in the entire time I went to school in New Iberia, I think of 2 occasions that I know of where other people who I went to school with might have started their own band or type of thing. Yeah. Other than that, if you wasn't marching or in church, they didn't have any outlets towards doing music like talking about, because even though, for instance, New Iberia and Lafayette are 20 miles apart, you might as well have been in a whole other world.
As a child, you can't cover much ground.
Shoot, even as an adult, it's a whole new world. Because out here, in that same way that the whole entire world wants to go to New Orleans, and because New Orleans is New Orleans, here in Acadiana, everybody wants to filter out here to Lafayette, because Lafayette is the big town here of Acadiana. So going from New Iberia to Lafayette at 20 miles, that you might as well just, it's in that same way like we was talking about earlier about how he was asking me about going to New Orleans and I told you it was nothing to do. Yeah. Well, the average person out here will not say that same thing about going to New Orleans. That's a trip. That's a journey.
It feels like it. It feels like a world away.
But on the other hand, it ain't nothing to me. I'll even go to New Orleans right now if I needed to.
Sure.
It's 2 hours, okay, whatever.
I don't think people realize that, but it was emphasized to me years ago when they started talking about Hollywood South. Mm-hmm. And the justification behind that, or how it kind of earned that name, was that you could drive 20 to 50 miles in any direction and come upon a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah.
You got the bayou right here, you got hill country up north, you got plantations over here, you got Bourbon Street right here, you got the lake or the North Shore on the lake, just a million different places to insert yourself. And within those bounds, you find a different dialect. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you find a different tribe. There's different genres that are native to that area.
Yeah.
And it's due to so many different influences over hundreds of years that we find ourselves with such a colorful palette, you know?
It's crazy because even within that, like the entire world will discover those differences, but even on the inside, the differences between someone from New Iberia, Lafayette, and someone from New Orleans
Culture
is mind-blowingly different. The problem is that the average person outside this area won't know that there's that type of detailed difference.
Right.
You know, like you know about from New Orleans proper, just like I lived in New Orleans proper. We both know that there's a difference between St. Aug and Jesuit.
Sure.
We know that there's a very detailed difference between St. Aug and Jesuit. The average person out here looking at high school in New Orleans, there ain't no difference between St. Aug and Jesuit. It's two private schools in New Orleans.
No shit.
Right.
That's crazy.
It's that type of separation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, when you watch popular television and if they try to portray somebody from down south in general, it's a train wreck to us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, dead on, they have never been here before and they're trying to speak about it.
But on the other side, you take a show like Swamp People or Moonshiners, because the black dude on Moonshiners is from New Iberia.
Okay.
You know, and then, you know, Swamp People shoot them, all that kind of stuff. Me being from here, but lived in New Orleans all those years, I'm more used to the intertwining of it than the average person. Like the average person from New Orleans, here's Swamp People, they might as well be foreign citizens.
Yeah, that's right.
To me, that's
right
regular. Like I can understand you from New Orleans, and I can understand you from Thibodeau or Morgan City or Generate or what may have you, because that's what real South Louisiana is.
Yeah.
And most New Orleanians don't know that's real South Louisiana.
That's funny.
Most people from Cajun country don't know how real close New Orleans actually is to out here. And yeah, it's crazy.
You said in high school you didn't see many bands popping up. Did you have any experiences that emphasized local heritage, I guess, or local music, something locally, something that was unto itself? I
didn't know it. I knew of it at the time. I didn't know how to apply it because it wasn't applicable in New Iberia, like talking about. But the whole Cajun and Zydeco aspect of it, that's very specific to here in Acadiana. But it's more of a thing that was, I guess, was more on the outskirts. Like I knew what Zydeco was. I knew it was a Cajun music was. I grew up with it. You know, for those who don't know, Zydeco to me, to sum it up, is basically Cajun country R&B. To me, is what Zydeco is, with an accordion instead of a second guitar. You know, so I knew what it is, but it's not like I didn't know anybody who was playing accordion. I didn't know anybody who was involved in Zydeco. I just knew it was something that they were playing on the radio on the quote-unquote R&B station on Sunday mornings after the church service stuff going into the afternoon.
All right.
You know, so I knew it from that perspective, but I didn't know anybody who was actually applying it because, you know, Zydeco back then, that's more of a Opelousas type of thing. That's more of a quote-unquote North Acadiana thing to me in reference towards where it was being actually applied. But that music was making towards the radio, so it caught my attention.
Yeah, that's funny. It's interesting to me to find out where children first encounter these different genres, because like we're talking about, there's so many around us. And festivals is a great place for children to see a myriad of genres, like the radio station, I suppose, but at specific times, like you pointed out. And that's so cool to me to see a child come upon a new genre because it's from another world, basically. You know, if they haven't encountered it before, it's something foreign to them too.
Yeah, I would love, if it was up to me, I would love for more Acadiana children to be exposed to brass band music. Sure. And I would love for more New Orleans children to be exposed to Zydeco.
Yeah.
Because it's once again, having heavily experienced both sides, you know, it's really the same thing. They're both forms of R&B, soul, and funk. They just use slightly different rhythms and slightly different instrumentation. That's really the only difference between the two. Yeah. Like, and I'm one of those people that's so in between that I got to try to figure out how to put both into a song. Sure. You know.
So you, what comes after mixtapes? What do you decide to do within music?
I guess by the time I got to high school would be the time period where, okay, I need other people. I actually need a band. Which the word band is kind of crazy in reference towards me too, because high school for me is the mid-90s. Mm-hmm. There weren't many black bands out there for anything in the mid-90s from the mainstream, you know. And of course we don't have the internet yet, so I can't dig and know about, you know, Death or Bad Brains or anything like that.
I was thinking of Death, dude. I was like, dude, the 70s punk band, who would have known it?
They existed, but think about where I'm coming from. Think about where I'm from. Like my parents wasn't punk listeners. Right,
that wasn't down here.
They were barely hip hop listeners. And by barely, I mean barely.
Well, what was causing you to seek out a band? Are you writing material at that time? Because before you said you were just kind of, a curator and a DJ, and you weren't writing.
It's simple. I'm a musician, and simple process is that musicians are in bands.
But I mean, are you writing your own music?
I a little bit, not too much. Once again, I'm still in that what you would call now that cover band mode. Like, okay. I really want other musicians to link up with, so we can play Marvin Gaye, Jackson 5, the Capitals, Cool Jerk, you know, Isaac Hayes, and because once again, that's what I'm thinking all these other bands did. They came up playing other people's stuff before they got to the point to where they got their own stuff.
Truth.
You know, and I also know that they didn't necessarily write all their own stuff themselves by then. Yeah. I knew what songwriters were. You know, I didn't know anything about Tin Pan Alley.
That escapes a lot of people.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about Tin Pan Alley, but I studied Motown growing up. Like I consider myself a Motown historian. Like,
nice.
The second social studies project I ever did in my life for competition was on the history of Motown.
Beautiful.
You know, so if I did that at 12, and now we're talking about on 15, 16, well, I already know Berry Gordy wrote all that for the Supremes and the Jackson 5 or whatever. So all I need is a band. All I need is a band of musicians to quote unquote get a deal. And yeah, I know I could write something, but they're gonna have people write stuff for us because that's how music quote unquote is. You know, you
were finding these things out.
Yeah,
you spent some time in the card catalog.
Right, just finding out. And once again, like in a liner notes, well, Berry Gordy's not in the band. Why is his name here? Well, because he wrote the damn song. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Well, Stevie Wonder's not anything with the Jackson 5. Why is he here? Because he wrote the song that the Jackson 5 are doing.
Okay.
You know, it's that type of simple. Like, to me, that's simple. You know, it's 1 + 1 is 2.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So by this time period, I'm like, okay, well, I need other musicians. I need like a drummer, a piano player, a guitarist, maybe a couple of horn players. Because once again, I'm thinking in that 80s S mode where you have a full horn section, you have 2 guitarists,
sure.
You have a keyboard organist, a drummer, whatever.
What are you playing? Because I don't believe you.
I first took piano lessons at 6.
Okay.
I did saxophone beginning in school band in 6th grade. Because once again in Iberia, they didn't start band until 6th grade.
Right.
And I'm self-taught, sneaking behind my mom's back, going into the sanctuary on drums. I'm self-taught on the drums.
Okay.
So by this time period, I've already had a couple of years of marching band in reference towards saxophone, because that would have been middle school. Couldn't do marching band and sports at the same time in high school.
Right.
So I chose playing the 3 sports over being in marching band.
Okay.
You know, I'd already spent the last 5-6 years sneaking on the drums in the sanctuary after church, playing it with coat hangers.
Okay.
When I went actual sticks, because musicians. Drummers brought their, I didn't know drummers brought their, I didn't know drummers brought their own sticks with them yet.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, these coat hangers will work.
So
I knew that I needed musicians to band. But once again, what's crazy about it is at that time when I thought band, yeah, I kind of sort of thought about musician-based band, but at this time I'm thinking more of, like, for instance, the Commodores by this time wasn't showing themselves with the instruments themselves. This is the post Lionel Richie Commodores that I'm alive for.
Right.
You know, I wasn't alive for Jungle Boogie, I was alive for Night Shift. Totally different group. You know, Prince has musicians, but Prince isn't really quote unquote doing R&B. Rick James isn't really quote unquote doing R&B, and I want to do R&B. So when I think of R&B, I'm thinking of, well, the Temptations. They're a singing group. You don't see any instruments on there. Right. 4 tops. Isaac Hayes, Barry White, what may have you. So I wanted to get a band, but I also really wanted a singing group. Is really what I was truly thinking about when I said bands. You know, I knew. You know, I knew the singing group and the backing band. Think about how Motown used to do it. They'd have the Supremes up front, and they'd have the band behind them.
You're old enough at this point to draw from several different evolutions of the format of what is a band.
Yeah.
So I mean, you pick one and you roll with it.
Right. I didn't even know that there was a format or a path. I'm just going off of what I've seen and heard for the past 10, 15 years before that. It's like, okay, either you're going to be a band where you're playing the instruments yourselves and doing the singing, or you're going to be in a singing group with some house band or the company band or whatever phrasing I was using at the time is going to be playing behind you. So I was looking for some combination of that. Whoever I could possibly find. It really didn't work because once again I was in New Iberia. Nothing against New Iberia, but small town, South Louisiana. You know, it's not like we had anything near what was, say, formulating in Houston or New Orleans at the same time.
Who's to say, you know? So what avenue would you find yourself in as a part of that band? Vocals or the sax, the piano?
The vocals, the front man stuff.
Okay.
The front man stuff. Because once again, thought process, I always thought that the front man was the leader. Then go back to...
He's the face.
Yeah. See, I didn't know all that from the industry standpoint. I just knew exactly, okay, well, Michael Jackson has to be the leader of the Jackson 5. He's singing all the leads. Right. Diana Ross has to be the leader of the Supremes. She's singing all the leads.
Yeah.
You know, Benny King must have something to do with Average White Band because my parents had the Benny and Me album, Average White Band, and he's the singer. He's doing all the lead stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the concept of a musician singing lead while playing, and it's not a band. Like, I didn't know nothing about that yet.
Sure.
Like, why would the drummer sing lead? He's behind the drum set. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
As somebody who's been a drummer and has sung lead since then, you know, it's whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But so, like, yeah, that's the whole thing. Matter of fact, I was just listening to another podcast today, and it was about JT, from the singer from Kool and the Gang.
Okay.
They're interviewing him. When I tell you, I thought he was cool growing up. I thought he was cool because he not cool as in COOL, as in KOL. Because I thought he was cool. That was the leader of the gang.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because he was the front man. I didn't know nothing about their instrumental history before that. He was just doing Hollywood swinging and all that. I know about them doing Ladies' Night Celebration, Miss Lady, all that, their 80s stuff. Yeah. You know, so I thought he was. Who is JT? That's not cool.
That's funny.
That's the way I thought about stuff there. So that's the way I looked to try to solve it based upon the way I was thinking about it. You know?
Well, looking back, do you think that you, I guess, had a penchant for coordinating? Because, like you mentioned, that you would rally your friends together to kind of delegate. If you were comfortable delegating to be able to come to an end result that was a vision in your mind. To come to fruition, basically.
The number 2 thing in my life, both then and now, for the most part, besides music, is sports.
Okay.
So I'm a major sports head.
Yeah.
So when I was telling you earlier about the recording of the basketball game in my neighborhood that my friends are doing, well, somebody's got to organize that game too. Yeah. So I was the one who would be the one going up and down the street. Hey, can you come play? Whatever.
Right.
You're like, all right, y'all gonna play? Wait, wait, don't you have a video camera? Let me holler at that video camera real quick and film this right here.
Sure.
Right? So there's lost footage somewhere. I think I have at least one friend in New Iberia. Hopefully they still have it, because that's the way I think.
Hopefully they catch this cast.
Hopefully they still have the video footage from like 1991 of us playing basketball in the driveway, and somebody, possibly me or somebody else, is doing the play-by-play on it.
Okay.
That kind of organization and delegation has been something that I've always done. It's the combination of being a leader and a team player. I always wanted to be a team player. That's why I always want to be in a band or a singing group, because I didn't want to be a solo artist. I want to be, those album cover pictures where you see them arm in arm or whatever, they smiling or whatever. Now, I don't know nothing about the behind the scenes drama that type of stuff happens now.
Yeah, but in general, there's strength in numbers,
because being in a band kind of reminds me of like being on a team in sports.
Yeah.
You're going to need 5 people to play basketball. You're going to need 11 to do football. Well, to do music, I'm going to need at least 3 other people besides me for at least some sort of 4-piece band.
So what do you come up with? What do you do? What do you come up with?
I came up with asking a lot of people these days and getting told a whole lot, because the more I grew up, the more I realized that my thought process wasn't isolating, but it was different than, I've run into a lot of people over the years since I was a kid who would want to jump on towards, singing a song or whatever. It's just that fun for that moment. But I'm trying to think about how
long term.
How could we have this type of fun and actually make a little money out of it for like the next 2-3 years, whatever. And they're just because they came out to play, and I happen to have a cassette recorder, so they want. That's
and then we all grow up and it's the same story.
and that's what it is today. Like literally, that's exactly what it is today. So I have a little brother, 5 years younger than me. So while he's the type that has the ability to do everything that I do, he just didn't have necessarily the want. And that's probably partially my fault, being the older brother, that older brother, younger brother aspect of things.
Sure.
Where, I wouldn't necessarily say I forced him to do it, but I'm not going to say he had much of a choice either, because that's all the main stuff that I was doing. And if you're going to follow your older siblings towards what they're doing, that's what you're going to do.
That was a minion by birthright, huh?
Right, so... It's a good one. I like that one. So it came out to being just years of wanting to try to figure out that same dream. And when I became a teenager, that's when pinpointing, okay, it's going to be this. Because before that, there was some computer science aspirations. Of course, there was sports aspirations, because sports is right underneath music to me.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that now in hindsight, I realize how much on the cusp I truly was towards combining those things. Because here in the world today, those 3 main elements that I just told you with computer science and programming, music and sports, they're like this all day long. So like somebody like me, if I'd have grown up in like, Philadelphia or New York or just someplace bigger, I probably would have ran into it. Hell, if I grew up in New Orleans, I probably would have just ran into it. Right, they just stumbled all into that combination. But being in New Iberia, it was like a whole other world to try to solve, because once again, small time.
Yeah, but that's kind of a consequence of being. It's kind of a consequence of being a jack of all trades. But how do they say, an expert in none?
Jack of all trades, a master in none. Yeah, that's none. Me. Right. That's me.
Right. What the consequence is that maybe it doesn't always come to fruition. And as we know now, at least I've understood, is that the niche is where you need to be. You need to park yourself. The specialists make all the money. You know what I'm saying, in the medical field, and so on and so forth. When it comes to artistry, if you get good at that one thing and find your niche, then you can focus and become the best. The master.
The other side of that situation is that if you can't find somebody who knows that specific niche, but yet you want to be involved in the process, well, then you have to figure it out yourself. And without even facing that obstacle growing up, that's what I had to end up doing. Was that, okay, I want to do all this. Mm-hmm. And I know this is the process towards doing the one main thing, getting on stage, being that music star, that R&B, that rock and roll star. I can't even say this is not even a time period where the concept of rap star would even come into most people's brains, because how young hip hop was at the time.
Sure.
So like I was explaining earlier with the whole cassette thing, well, I know I want my stuff to come out those speakers. So how do I get them on the speakers? Well, I have to be able to sing the material and record the material so it can end up on it, so now I'm a novice amateur engineer. It's not like, oh, I want to grow up to be a music engineer and record everybody's stuff. No, it's just that it's part of the process. So you got to know some of the skill set in order to move the process forward.
That's easier said than done, though, because forever the recording process was a gray area unless a child or young adult went into the studio and understood what went into that album that shows up on the shelf.
Which was beautiful about the time period we're talking about, because had I been 10 years older, had I been born in 1970 instead of 1980, would I have been introduced to the concept of cassette tapes?
Right.
Just as easily in, say, 73 like I was in like 83 or 84.
Right.
It's just that one slight difference in technology. Would I have gotten involved into basic computer programming? No, not in the 70s, because that's an 80s thing.
Right.
Which led towards discovering MIDI and discovering that, oh, this computer science stuff I had been studying for 3-4 years
has
in school,
a use.
I can actually try to make this use. Where was this 5 years ago?
Yeah.
when I was trying to program a computer to play a single instrument melody by I don't know how much you remember about basic programming, like literally the 10 print line, the whole that was late elementary, middle school, and the high school for me was computer science. So had I known back then that, and I'm listening to all these podcasts now, so I'm hearing all these people I've listened to and what they went through with them being like 5 to 10 years older than me. So what they went through at like 17 to 20 is stuff that I was trying to figure out at like 10 to 12, and now I know. Well, they were actually able to figure it out because something like Pro Tools was initiated in like 92.
Okay.
So therefore, Wu-Tang Clan is one of the first acts to actually use Pro Tools, or UGK is one of the first acts to actually use Pro Tools the way we know Pro Tools today, but they did it 30 years ago.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm in Iberia. What's Pro Tools?
Yeah.
Wouldn't have a clue what it is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I know MIDI sounds exist.
Yeah.
So instead of going the software route, I'm trying to program the stuff in through MS-DOS.
Right.
It's just having to know the skill set it is to move the overall process further.
Sure.
And that's the other side to like specialists to me. Is that, once if somebody else is in the room and they know what you know skill set wise, then where's your place?
Yeah.
Why do they need you?
Right. Yeah. So what is the end result of this this pursuit? What happens?
Historically for me is this is where New Orleans comes in, because graduated from high school. Like I said, my dad's side of my family is military. My dad was a Marine. His oldest younger sister, Navy. His older brother, Army, Airborne.
Okay.
My mom's side, grandfather was in the Army, World War II, but he had 3 daughters. My mom, her 2 sisters, all teachers, or all either admin teacher situation, grandmother, librarian, teacher, what may have you. So I say all that to say I ended up at University of New Orleans, but partially how I ended up at University of New Orleans is I joined the Louisiana National Guard at 17. Not necessarily by choice, per se.
Which sounds like you had a lot of regiment in your life.
That's what happens. That's what happens when you have a mom who has a master's in English and a dad who was a Marine from Paris Island.
Yeah.
That's the reason why when you step out in that truck I have outside, that was my dad's truck. That's why the Marine handle is still there, even though I'm an Army vet. You know what I'm saying? So I went to National Guard basic training in between junior, senior year of high school, came back to New Iberia for senior year of high school. That would be 97, 98. And that was a time period where if it would have been up to me, I'd have been gone out of state. Like small town raised, internationally minded. once again, I'm trying to go to Tokyo back at 8 years old on the tour.
Yeah.
Remember? So I'd have been gone out of US. I would have went to USC because they had a college of music business. Once again, coming from small town, late 90s. Oh wait, there's an entity that actually teaches music business. Well, this is what I need.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles. Oh, this is what I need. But no, not Louisiana National Guard. You're going to UNO. Well, I ended up choosing UNO for two reasons. Number one, the jazz department. I was like, I don't know too much about jazz, but I know that it's something that it gets down musically with that I want to know more of. And number two, Mardi Gras.
What was the jazz department at that time? Was it just jazz studies, or did they still have a band?
They had all of it. As a matter of fact, the one credit on my timing reference towards that is that the recording studio that's at UNO now got started while I was at UNO.
Fantastic.
You know, I was one of the first people to actually record in said studio.
Speaking
in
of which,
2001, right? Yeah. So they had jazz studies, jazz performance, education. My saxophone experience got me into the classical side.
Okay.
My singing experience got me on the classical side, and then I flipped part of the singing experience into the jazz side. So at UNO, I was in the jazz and the classical department.
Was one required to participate in the other?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
So you just decided to go in both directions.
Yeah. Once again, I can't help myself. I want to be a part of it all. You know, this is all that you're offering for music. There were three main things while I was at UNO they offered for music. It was the classical department, where it would be, you know, chamber singers vocally, one ensemble, symphonically. Music ed, I didn't touch music ed because, to be honest with you, I didn't want to teach kids, you know. And then the jazz side, where you have the jazz performance, musicianship. This is where Ellis Marsalis comes into the picture. Ed Peterson, Steve Masakowski. Yeah. You know, they're all there. These are people I'm walking by every day. Hey, what's up? You know what I'm saying? That are going around the world being exalted.
Right.
And I'm saying what's up with them, like me and you here right now.
Sure.
You know, the third aspect was while I was at UNO, they started UNO Pep Band up. They restarted UNO Pep Band up. Okay. For the basketball season. So I started I started playing baritone saxophone in that the first year, but then the second year, or at the end of the first year, they needed some switching out because the people who were playing drums at the time, it was marching drums, so it was snare and bass, not a set. For whatever reason, couldn't go. They needed somebody to drum. Hell, I spent all those years at Mount Calvary sneaking off the
playing all the cards.
I'll do the drumming for it. Yeah. So the following year they get a drum set. Well, now I'm playing drums in Pep Band now because y'all got a set. Know, y'all don't need your saxophone. You got all these jazz and classical, real jazz and classical majors playing all this. I'm gonna be on the drums. Yeah. You know, so every main aspect that UNO had musically, except for music ed, I was a part of. You know, and that's just how it was. Just trying to discover what made New Orleans so magical. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you can remember what it was like in the late 90s going into like 2000, all that is what I was trying to discover. Sure. All that, you know.
I had interviewed saxophonist Christopher Burton. Okay. And he's a little younger, so I believe he came there afterwards, and they ended the music program proper while he was there. It just became jazz studies.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why I was asking, what do you remember being there?
It was because Ellis, Mr. Marsalis he was the head or whatever that fancy Coca-Cola chair of jazz studies thing. He was that when I got in there in '98.
Gotcha.
You know, so whatever aspect he was talking about did exist. They probably just advanced it over more terminology. Yeah. Things like that, whatever. The guy you was interviewing, he was pre-Katrina at UNO, or was he post-Katrina? Because that makes a difference too.
Pre.
Okay. So yeah, they was probably merging that on because I got there in '98. Mr. Marsalis retired from being the head of jazz studies at UNO in 2001. I was in his last vocal combo class.
Gotcha.
That was also the first vocal combo class to record in that studio that's in the Performing Arts Center.
That was a big deal, man. How did you like that?
That was a major deal. Now that you know all this history about me, imagine 21-year-old me being in New Orleans at the University of New Orleans.
He was firing on all eight.
Being taught under Ellis Marsalis.
Right.
And you want me to go in with a 3-piece band and record some songs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking right. Let's go.
Let me ask you, did you oppose to any kind of trad music? I mean, you wanted to be a part of everything, but I mean, you were ambitious at the time.
Music never, the type of music never really mattered to me. So that's why it was so easy for me to jump into jazz, even though I never really had any jazz experience. Like Bob James, album BJ4. And the only reason why I remember that particular album is because that's the one my parents had on cassette.
Yeah.
The Grover Washington Jr. album. That's really like the extent of my quote unquote jazz history till I got to New Orleans.
Which one? Reason?
I can't even tell you which one it is.
Did it have Masquerade on it?
Maybe.
Okay.
To be honest with you, like before being at UNO, my experience with Grover Washington Jr., for example, would be that he sung the solo part on Just the Two of Us, of which I didn't even know that was actually his song. I thought that was Bill Withers' song.
Gotcha.
Up until I was like in my 20s.
Cool.
So
okay. Yeah. No.
So that was the extent of my jazz history until I got to UNO, but I knew jazz had a sound. I might have just discovered the Jazz Crusaders maybe a couple of years before.
Fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, Lighthouse 68. I listened to that stream
all the time.
I've almost got
all of their albums.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So just going through his music, you know what I'm saying? Why can I not on a Monday afternoon sing something in French or Italian in classical class that morning and then go listen to Wes Montgomery, Miles Davis in my jazz class that afternoon, or however it was opposite.
It pays to be well-rounded, just like you're talking about with the albums.
Why couldn't I be in the auditorium of the PAC singing in Excelsi's Deo and then be at Jazz at the Sandbar later on that week saying Take the A Train? Why couldn't I? Meanwhile, I'm hip hop is slipping in outside the studies. You know what I'm saying? Why can't I do all that?
That was left field, dude.
That's what music was. That's what music seemed like to me. The people who did things best in the game, in the industry, were well-rounded. I wanted to be a Berry Gordy type, but I want to be a more successful artist than Berry Gordy at the same time too. But I also want to own the label.
So you're trying to coordinate, and you're in the recording studio.
Everything.
And what is coming together? Excuse me, on a personal front with this band that you've got in your mind that you want to create.
I feel like I was a slightly bit ahead of my time in reference to this concept, and then as I got from high school to college, this concept started manifesting itself in the mainstream. I always felt that you could use the three main elements of music was playing the instruments, singing the songs, and then rap verses. Because I grew up in a time period where you would have an R&B song, but you would have somebody throwing a rap verse as the third verse in the R&B song before they got to the final chorus or whatever it was.
Well, the rap music was on the R&B station.
Right, like on some Shaka Khan Feel For You. Like that's one of the first raps I heard was either Rapture from Debbie Harry or Blondie, where she does the whole verse in the background. I give her full credit for that. Yes, she is a hip hop head. or the rap verse from who did the rap verse on Shaka Khan's Feel For You? That was that Cool? Not Cool Herc. Was that it was one Cool Modi Cool? It was one of the early ones.
I can't remember what, I remember the verse. I don't know who that was.
But so I'm used to, and then once again, by the time I'm hitting middle school, people like Bobby Brown are existing, where he's singing, dancing, whatever, but he also throwing in the rap verse when he left New Edition. So I always thought of a band experience of being able to have that combination. It's the 90s. We're going into the 2000s. So why can't an act play the instruments on stage, do some singing, throw some harmonies and that stuff, and then one of them be a rapper and throw some rap verses in. So that's the way I'd always approach music in the 90s, having that combination of singing and rapping. Because that was the thing that was coming out. So that's what I was looking for to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what I liked about being in New Orleans in reference towards college, because something like, to me, not knowing what brass band music was at all, once again, coming from New Iberia, and discovering it and realizing how many different genres and aspects that brass band music actually touches.
Brass as a piece, as an element.
Yeah, as it musically from obviously the R&B elements, obviously the jazz elements, but this is 90s New Orleans, so of course the hip hop element is coming to brass band music heavily.
Yeah,
you know, just the and then this is also where I'm discovering something like shout out to Mark Mullins, for example, with Bonarama.
Mm-hmm.
I was working at Tipitina's French Quarter the first time I heard Bonarama, and they were doing their Led Zeppelin tribute thing.
Okay.
You mean to tell me you have a trombone that's on a wah-wah pedal? You're sounding like Zeppelin? I'm 19. I'm 19 at the time, so I'm like, yeah, this is the type of so why can I not go up there at Bonarama and spit a 16 while they jamming the Zeppelin with 4 trombones, a bassist, and a drummer?
That's
why
funny.
not?
Yeah.
So that's what I want to do.
It's funny because on so many fronts, because people take for granted that at one time that just wasn't happening. And I mentioned earlier about the rap being on the R&B station, and that was because there were no rap stations. Right. That was their foot in the door. You know what I mean? Which is bizarre now.
Q93 in New Orleans was the first quote-unquote rap station I ever experienced.
Okay.
Once again, I live 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So it's not like I had access to it every day.
Sure.
So the first time I'd be on the basketball team and we'd be playing a playoff game in New Orleans or whatever, or in Thibodeau or anywhere in the 985 or the 504, you know, Q93 is reaching out there. So the concept of it being an all rap, all hip hop station, yeah, shout out to Wild Wayne and all of them, because that's my first personal experience in it. Yeah. And I had to go to y'all for it. It wasn't like just turn on there. It was, because the ones out here was still straight R&B with the occasional late at night, you know, mix show.
Your experience of the infusion of hip hop into what was already playing was through R&B, and I was seconding that. But I mean, if you think about it, the first rap music, I guess not even as a standalone genre, it was dance music. Mm-hmm. So it would have its place in time on an R&B station, stay on a Friday night when they were playing a dance mix, and then somebody might come on and MC for a verse, but it wasn't a focal point. It damn sure wasn't its own station. So there's a lot going on.
Oh yeah. I just me personally, I just tried to follow along the process. Okay, well, yeah.
Hey, have you heard about Neworleansmusicians.com? It's a place where articles, music videos, interviews, and streaming music from Louisiana musicians can be found. Fans can join free. Music business professionals can join free too. And Louisiana musicians can join for free as well. It's also the place where Louisiana bands go to network and get free promotion. We've definitely got plenty, like this band. Check them out.
You can, because I never thought about being an MC or a rapper exclusively because I was a musician.
Right.
And rappers didn't play instruments.
No.
You know, I didn't know what a beat machine was. They didn't have no beat machines around here back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know how they were doing it.
Yeah.
But I knew that the beginning of stuff. You know, I knew where Rapper's Delight came from. I knew what beat that came from. I had heard of Curtis Blow and realized, wait, he had musicians behind him playing. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Why were they not signed to Motown or Stax? That's how far out yet narrow-minded I was with it. Because when it came to black music, it was either Motown, Stax, and I don't know nothing else.
Yeah.
You know, so everybody was either signed to Motown or signed to Stax, as far as I knew. So why were they not? You know, so. Yeah, I just wanted to get a combination of all I was interested in, because I'm interested in the groove. If it's funky, if it's something, like I said, I can dance to and jam to, then that's what I want to do. I don't care what genre it is.
Well, that was the end, to get the DJs to play it, you know. What does it end up being? What's the result?
The result, as far as material concerned, it became the EP I have now, the first time, May 10th, 2001. Okay. Because that was the date I went into the studio at UNO and recorded those 4 songs as my final exam.
Sweet.
For Ellis's last class.
Yeah.
Before he retired. You know. So it came out of that. At the same time, I got to back up a year because that was the first time, the summer of 2000 was the first time I bought myself a desktop computer.
Okay.
To do production.
All right.
Because once again, even in college, what may have you, I'm not trying to be an MC. I'm not trying to be a rapper. But I'll be that guy that gets these other people out. Once again, now I'm stepping back from the stuff I used to do, the cassette, being the main person involved, and I'm trying to push other people. Because once again, I just want to be one of the people in the picture. I just want to be one of the people that you see in the liner notes. I wouldn't mind you seeing my name a lot in the liner notes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But you know, it doesn't have to be Anthony Daniels or Moose in the gang or anything like that. It could be y'all. Just remember who put this together.
Sure.
That's my mindset towards it. So the summer of 2000, I bought my first desktop to start doing production for hip hop and R&B stuff.
Okay.
I ran into a classmate my first day of college in '98. I ran into a guy, and he was in military uniform from the Navy. So of course that caught my attention, being currently in Army and the National Guard.
Right.
As a matter of fact, my first day of college was actually a week late because I had to graduate from Fort Lee from AIT, from Quartermaster School. So like, I don't know, I graduated from Quartermaster School like August 22nd or whatever date it was. And that following Monday, the 24th, is when school started, but I wasn't able to leave Fort Lee till like the 29th or whatever to fulfill, military stuff. So I met a guy, and he had been in the Navy, and he was just coming back home because he was in full-time Navy. He was in the real Navy. He was one of them who had to, all those stories you hear about pirates in Somalia and having to monitor boats to make sure they ain't trying to sneak it. Yeah, he was one of those guys who had to do all those checks.
Yeah.
It's a real military shit compared to me. He was in a singing group. Oh, now you definitely have my attention. So I got this guy who's in the music class with me, and he already has his own group of other guys from New Orleans.
All right.
Oh, now you have my attention.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, you have my attention. So when they started doing their own type of singing, the name of the group was called Crescendo at the time. They're somewhere with their singing somewhere in between like Boyz II Men and Take Six. Their type of singing.
And this is 2001, you said?
This is like 98, 99, 2000.
Okay.
It's like this is leading back to the 2001.
Gotcha.
So they're doing that. I would love to try to figure out some music with y'all, because that's the phrase I would actually use. I'm not trying to produce no stuff for you. I'm not trying to write, songwrite, or anything like that. I want to try to figure out some music with you, and however it comes back. So that's where it comes in towards me buying my first desktop computer in 2000. Because I have friends also here from New Iberia who then went to UNO with me. They're the ones who want to be the rappers.
Gotcha.
Okay, y'all want to be the rappers? Cool. Well, then y'all write whatever y'all write. I'm going to start putting the beats together using this jazz and classical studies that I have. Okay? People are using computers these days to put these music together. Because once again, I never knew what beat machines were. I always thought
It's crazy that you jumped straight into digital.
Jumped straight into digital.
What was in the studio? What kind of technology was in the studio? They had to have analog equipment there?
They had the one at UNO, once again, that's 2001. So they had a Mac. They were using Pro Tools.
No shit.
So I've never officially recorded, like my dad had reel-to-reel growing up. That reel-to-reel is still at my parents' house to this day.
Nice.
I just looked at it like a few days ago.
Yeah.
He had 8 tracks or whatever, but as far as the actual production and the making of it, you was either hand clapping and going a cappella, or you had instruments. I didn't know nothing about no beat machine.
Yeah.
To this day, I've never personally used a beat machine for any music I've done, because I have no frame of reference towards it.
Yeah.
It was either real instruments, hand clapping, or going straight to the software with Pro Tools and Cubase and all that stuff.
Sure.
So that, and then that's what led towards the recording of 2001. By 2001, I'm trying to figure out how to do production with these guys that want to do the hip hop stuff. I'm trying to lend a hand towards these R&B guys who are all older than me. So because they're all older than me and I'm not from New Orleans, they kind of maybe got holier than thou thou-ish with me.
Comes with the territory, man. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because they don't know where New Iberia is. Where you from? New Hibernia? No.
Right.
Literally, that was one of the first questions I got when I told them where I was from.
Yeah.
Where's New Hibernia? No, not the bank, motherfucker. Shit. Iberia, like the peninsula in Spain.
Yeah.
Oh, you probably don't even know what that is either. But so after that, it was just a formulating of that. Somewhere in that time period, I started getting fed up with the rappers, because once again, it was a more serious version of what I went through as a kid. You know, I always got friends every now and then, rarely, to hit a Casio keyboard or do some singing on the cassette tapes. Now I'm trying to do this for real, but I'm going through some of the same shit.
Yeah.
Where y'all want to be rappers, y'all want to write, y'all want to smoke, y'all want to drink, or what may have you. That's why I learned how to smoke and drink, by the way. So
comes with the territory.
The only two things I do. The only two things I do, but that's how I learned how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have no childhood versions of that. Once again, Father Marine, have no childhood versions of that.
Right.
But once again, I also know this is where one of the main phrases I use today came up about 20-25 years ago. Recording the music is the easiest part of the entire process in my mind.
All right.
It's easy. You can get, you know how many times in my life I've gotten 2, 3, 4, 5 guys together around a microphone on a computer, set cakewalk towards some sort of beat I've got to put together, or what may have it, with no sampling, by the way, and they gonna write, they gonna smoke, they gonna spit their 16. And you know how many songs I've recorded in my life from my 20s that never made it out of that bedroom?
Same here. I do it for fun. I got tons of songs. I do it for fun.
I'll listen to some of that. I'll listen to some of that shit now. Just randomly, I'll sneak it in on my radio show. Some of those things sometimes, just because it's still always gonna be me. But I've been through so many situations with that, so it's like, okay, y'all bullshitting. Y'all really truly are bullshitting. Now we got to the point to where I want to put a compilation album together with these guys, because they're all talented.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're not ignorant.
Well, I mean, look,
ignorant from a sake of. Well, a couple of them are in the National Guard with me. We're all in college. I have an idea of the way y'all grew up, and y'all wasn't no woadies. Y'all wasn't no hood. Y'all might have had yeah. You know what I'm saying? So and they definitely know how to put words together in a cool way. It's not just, you know, it's not just shaky ass music that they're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? So okay, let's put a compilation together, because once again, this is the time period where, you know, record labels and the big frame, they're doing hip hop compilations. This is where, you know, this is right after Cash Money gets signed to the big thing. This is right after, you know, No Limit didn't have their share of compilations. Cash Money didn't have theirs. Rough Riders didn't have theirs. Rockefeller didn't have theirs. Death Row didn't have theirs a few years ago.
Mixtapes were hot.
Right, but this is the compilation, to where instead of it being like DJ Clue mixing it from one song to the other, this is where they did the album concept of having multiple. This is the various artists. Project. This is Time Life cassettes. Yeah. Now in the hip hop.
Reincarnated.
Right.
Yeah.
This is that time period. So okay, this is what's going on. This is what we're gonna do. So the second project officially in my life is called Urban Grooves Compilation Volume 1, because Urban Grooves was the first namesake I wanted to use from a company standpoint. That was going to be my Motown. Was Urban Grooves with a Z at the end, not an ES. Okay. You know, had a friend of mine who was in the singing group. He was also an artist. Draw his ass off. Drew a hand-drawn logo for me. This is the time period where we had scanning machines, so I got it scanned. Sure. So now it's digitized. All right, so we're gonna get these guys together. It was about a 13-track project. This album is still available streaming, by the way. That's the point I'm trying to get to. 13-track project. I did like 11 of the 13 tracks production-wise. Didn't spit a single verse on the entire project. Mm-hmm. I'm the guy in the back. I'm Manny Fresh. I'm Pharrell. I'm you know, Barry Gordy. I'm that person. I'm not trying to be in the front with it. Y'all can do all this. It's cool. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm trying to be Quincy Jones here.
Right.
You know, the reason why I bring that up and I say that it's still streaming right now is I think out of the 10 to 15 or so people that are on this particular project, I think there's only 2 other people besides me that's still doing something music related today.
Yeah, it comes with the territory. It's talent wasted on half steppers.
I know it was a long drawn out way to say that, but that was my overall point. This is something I've really been going through my whole entire life. In reference to us, people want to ride the wave, but then they don't necessarily want to commit to it.
I see it all the time, man. I got bands that I've signed to Neworleansmusicians.com, and I mean, shit, a year goes by and they're breaking up. When all of those people are in different bands now, it's just the next evolution of self. This
is worse because if I say there's 12 people on that project, either spitting the verse, singing background, whatever, I'm doing the production.
Yeah.
If I'm saying there's 12 people on there, then the other 10 aren't doing nothing music at all. Yeah. They're not like in some other project or went forth and did something, or they went into journalism, or they went to DJing or whatever. They're not doing shit with music at all. Nothing. Like I'm doing it for them. Yeah. Like everything I do is encompassing them by sevenfold in reference towards them being in music. But for the time they was doing that. Yeah. You know? Weird thing is, same thing with that singing group I was with too, because that's a 5-piece group. Someday I wanna get the rights to doing the movie, because they deserve. If you could ever imagine a movie that'd be like the 5 Heartbeats, except the 5 Heartbeats don't make it.
Okay.
It would be them. Yeah. It would be that movie, because that's exactly what it was. They awesome talent, great harmonies, everything else like that. Did my little part as being the gopher or the Randy Jackson of the Randy Jackson, the Jackson 5 sort of way of the group, and dissolved, just like you say with all those bands you signed up on the website. You know, it's just that type of thing. So by this time, we're talking 2002, 2003. Yeah. On one hand, that's happening. On the other hand, I develop a new friend, this professor at UNO, Dr. Alan Turley, a guy, I think he's originally from Austin.
All right.
And made it to UNO, and he's teaching a sociology of music class at UNO.
All right.
Once again, you got my attention. You were talking about sociology of music, because obviously you can see I like talking and breaking down stuff and what have you. So being able to apply that towards a music thing, oh yeah, let's do that.
Right.
Me and this other, I can't remember the female's name, we were the only 2 music majors in the entire class of like 35 students. It was the only 2. But he was a musician. He's a saxophone player.
All right.
Tenor sax, slightly older than me, so he comes from like hip hop and R&B for me in the 90s was like new wave for him in the 80s. Yeah. We're like that far apart age-wise. So near the end of that semester, I'd have to say this is what, 2000, fall of 02. So I did the jazz EP, putting the finishing touches on this hip hop compilation album. I'm dealing back and forth with guys who just want to be on the mic because it's fun or it's the thing to do, versus I'm trying to live the rest of my life doing this stuff. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to live the rest of my life. Y'all just want to party and bullshit. Yeah. You know, he comes up to me and he's like, well, back when I was younger, I was in a band. I don't remember the name of the band he was in. And he still has some of the recordings from some of the older new wave ska sounding stuff. Okay. Yeah, we're talking like the specials and like 85 type of stuff. I want to put a band back together. Would you be interested? Now, up until this point, my experience with reggae, let alone ska, I had no experience with ska whatsoever. Like, what the fuck is ska? Right. My experience with reggae is your stereotypical shit. You know, Bob Marley and the Wailers, you know, Bunny, you know, probably Shabba Ranks probably would have been in my top 3 of reggae experience by then, just to show you how far behind I was in there at the time. Right. But yeah, he wanted to put a band together, and I was like, sure. I'm like, you gonna be the front man? All right. All right, I get to go back out front on one hand, but I have musicians behind me. Okay, I'm good with this. Yeah. Because I got people behind me I can interact with and whatever, and I know what y'all doing. Y'all know what I'm doing because y'all also know I'm a musician. Put the band together was called the Reggae Ska Conspiracy. All right. So we're doing a combination of covers. We're doing Bob Marley stuff. We're doing Toots and the Maytals stuff. We're doing UB40 stuff. We're doing the special stuff. But he also had a couple of originals. We also had a few originals from the previous band he was in.
Yeah.
You know, so he gets the band together. He gets the musicians. I'm the front man. We're still far back enough in time to where he gives me the music to listen to on cassette. Awesome. You know, learn it, start performing. Going into 2003, this is the first time we performed. We're at a Voodoo Barbecue, first gig, Voodoo Barbecue. And you know Voodoo Barbecue ain't no Voodoo Barbecue, ain't not no stages, no PA, nothing like that. You know this.
Yeah.
And this is the one on the lake.
Yeah.
That we're over on the west end.
Yeah.
So we get to that, and we finally move up to where I was talking to you earlier about the Mermaid Lounge gigs and all the things like that. That's with that band, the a.k.a. Conspiracy. You know, moving towards that. So that was my first, real talk, that was my first official non-academic secular professional
performance.
Yeah, because before that it had been school or academic related or church related.
Right.
You know, so being in that band was the first time that I felt like an actual artist, an actual musician, because it's like, okay, these people paying $5 and $10 to come in and peep us out, and they're paying me money at the end for me to do something I wanted to do the last 20-something years of my life. Okay, this is it.
Got your wheels spinning.
Yeah, this is it. Okay, Tokyo, here I come. Right. You know what I'm saying? So that's basically it. That was the next couple of years of like music in New Orleans, was the combination of the UNO stuff, the background of the productions and what may have you with whoever guys, and the Reggae Ska Conspiracy. That was my early 20s in a nutshell.
Beautiful.
You know.
How did you feel about the genre, the ska genre, the art?
I was with it because once again, it's musicians. If you have a musician to say, I'll support it. Like,
well, you would happen to be plugged in. I get it. But yeah. I mean, as an expressive art form, did it do it for you?
If I'm plugged into it, it did it for me. That's what. If I'm digging it, it's plugged in. So it wasn't hard to figure out, because I know the academic side musically. I know the side of it from being a horn player myself, and a better than hack drummer, and being a front man. Okay, so all I got to learn is a little bit of twang to sound a little bit more Scottish, read British, you know. But yeah, I mean, I had already started my dreads by then, so I visually fit in.
Yeah,
you
right.
know what I mean?
Okay.
So yeah, it's and the tempos didn't mean anything to me, because, you know, rock music had tempos like that. And I've listened to rock music before.
It can borrow from
everything.
Many different corners of the earth. Absolutely.
The one thing I was bringing to it was ska music then, or I don't know about now. I doubt it now, but ska music back then didn't have a hip hop element to it.
Okay.
So when I was in that's what I was bringing to it. So I'm the front man. So I'm going to sing all this stuff. I'm going to be the main one dancing around on stage, but I'm gonna throw you a 16 in there too.
Sweet.
You know, while we're performing either one of the original things, or we're remixing a Bob Marley track or whatever, I'm gonna throw in 16 bars with you in between the singing too. So
yeah, that's great.
That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I did.
Commuted to streaming now. Say the name again so they don't forget. I want them to go check that out.
For the band. Oh, the name of the band is called the Reggae Ska Conspiracy.
Okay.
The band, it doesn't exist anymore, but
the music is up there.
But yeah.
Okay.
Matter of fact, some of if you listen to, there's one particular song in my discography from that time period. If you listen to The Waiting Game, the original version, because I have two versions, I have the original version and the remix version. If you listen to The Waiting Game, where I'm singing through, I'm just waiting for your call, that's from the Reggae Ska Conspiracy. That's from the band that Dr. Turley was in previously. That's a song that they did. So full circle, once again, I ended up doing another cover.
Yeah.
So there you go. And yeah, that song is from that time period. Matter of fact, that's him playing the saxophone on that particular song in the solo.
And how long of a span of time did you say you were in that band?
We had that band for about 2 years.
Okay.
So I'd say about 2002 to 2004. And then the New Orleans version of the band broke up. Then Katrina hit in 2005. But then we turned around and got another version of the band here in Lafayette for like a couple of shows in 06. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, 2 years mainstay and then a couple of shows a couple of years later.
What followed that for you?
More production. I was really in full-fledged production mode, being that behind the scenes person, because I already had my artist side frontman and in between doing UNO stuff and the conspiracy. So I didn't have to be the front man, the MC or whatever on the hip hop side. So I'm doing all the production stuff literally up until Katrina came.
Gotcha.
You know, so it was either the academic stuff, the conspiracy, or the production stuff up until Katrina. It was really Katrina that brought me towards being basically a hip hop front man, because the guys from here are really not involved in music now. Katrina didn't hit. They're going, you know, they're going back to concentrate either more on the military or go and find them a job or go and use the degree that they might have gotten the year leading up to the year before. The music
everybody.
It's all done. The ones from New Orleans, well, 80%, you know, there's five guys in the group, and then, you know, other musicians and other things I know. Well, 75% of them had never lived outside of New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, that was the story for a lot of people.
Yeah,
I don't know if you knew Nathaniel Woods, Bionic Brown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Nate. Oh my God. Yes.
He left first time evacuated, but ended up setting down roots in Colorado
in Denver,
and then passed.
Yeah. I know
I'll have to tell you more about that later. But so many people, New Orleans and the surrounding areas lost so many people permanently as a result of that.
Quick note now that you bring up Bionic. When I was interning at Offbeat, the same summer I bought the desktop, that fall I was interning at Offbeat. The hip hop band that Bionic was in was the first thing I wrote about in Offbeat.
Okay, was it Media Darlings?
No, way before Media Darling.
Okay.
Before Media Darling, before
that wasn't
Renaissance.
Necessarily a group.
Mental Metropolis was the name of the band he was in.
Gotcha.
And what turned me on to Mental Metropolis then was that this jazz drummer classmate I had, Dylan Hicks, he became the drummer for Mental Metropolis.
Gotcha.
When we were like freshman or sophomore at UNO. So I heard of that from them. And once again, hip hop band.
Yeah.
Because groups like The Roots, they were in Europe all through the 90s. How would I have heard of The Roots if they had been living in Europe throughout the 90s? So like hip hop band is like, whoa,
they had a strong presence in rap music that had evolved in my eyes. And when I say evolved, it wasn't being birthed in New Orleans, it was coming from outside. They were sampling jazz records. So the natural element was there in some form or another.
Right.
I mean, you weren't off the way out left field with that, you know what I'm saying?
Right. What I liked about Mental Metropolis, and therefore Bionic or what may have you, was when I discovered Mental Metropolis, it was an actual band.
Yeah.
Like that's what because like I said, the only main acts like that, either locally or mainstream at the time, was The Roots. And I had just discovered The Roots maybe like the year before through Things Fall Apart.
Sure.
Because Illadelph, Half-Life, and Do You Want More, once again, no Iberia. I have no access to that. And plus, they're living in Europe during this time period. So why would I know about a black hip-hop band that's living in Europe in the 90s without the internet?
Right.
You know, so when Dylan joined Mental Metropolis with Bionic and them, totally blew my mind, the concept. And I should have mentioned that earlier, because that was another aspect that tied in with the purchasing of the desktop towards leading towards everything.
I mean, let's jump right into what you were doing in music production. Sounds like what you just introduced in this conversation, the fact that you were becoming a front man and throwing 16s, and then pre-Katrina, post-Katrina, you are now hip-hop front man?
I am it's out of necessity. Okay. So Katrina comes. My girlfriend at the time is pregnant with my daughter. My daughter's 19 now, just graduated from East Jeff this past May. They're from Metairie.
Okay.
I'm from New Iberia. So when Katrina comes, I'm basically the one that's asked out. Even more so than them, because psychologically they're leaving where they've grown up or what may have you, but I'm not from there. Like I have good thing I have somewhere else to go.
Yeah.
I.e. New Iberia and Lafayette, unlike most of my New Orleans friends didn't have anywhere to go per se.
Yeah.
But I left this world 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So now New Iberia and Lafayette is getting 25, 26-year-old me when it was 18-year-old me had left.
Sure.
So the guys from New Iberia who out there in New Orleans ain't doing music anymore. The guys from New Orleans had never really experienced living outside of New Orleans, so they're thinking music, but their mind is gone. They're spread out all over the country. You know what I'm saying? You got one in Dallas, one in New York, one in Houston.
Yeah.
And ain't none of them ever lived outside of New Orleans except for the one that was in the Navy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's a whole other psychological experience for them. So I can't depend upon them. Dr. Turley then went back to Texas, so I can't necessarily depend upon him.
Yeah.
I can't depend upon the ones from New Iberia. I can't depend on ones from New Orleans. The whole modern world of communication and connection with people from out of the country hadn't hit us yet. We're still probably about 10 years away from that, from like social media networking, what may have you, like talking about.
Yeah.
So I have all this music and production and stuff that I've been doing. Urban Grooves compilation that come out as a thing the year or two before. Well, I might as well just start MCing for myself because I still want to do the music thing. I still want to perform. I don't have access to musicians or other MCs or anything. So, I might as well just do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's where the hip hop frontman stuff came. It came out of real absolute necessity, and Katrina put that shit over the top. As far as it being a necessity, as far as being in the music game, because I wasn't a musician that had instruments. You know what I'm saying? All the instruments I had been using all these years had been through UNO.
Well, I was going to ask, what are you laying verses over?
At the time,
you're not in touch with Iberia people at this time.
Yeah, but I have my own computer.
Okay.
So I'm recording once again. I'm doing exactly what I did in the '80s, except instead of it being a cassette recorder, it's a desktop computer now. So now I'm recording myself using let's see, from that time period, Cakewalk, Magic Studio. That'd be that time period. I get here to Lafayette after Katrina, and my cousin Eugene, shout out to my cousin Eugene, he was one of those guys who I tried to convince to be in the singing group thing with me back in the day.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
No.
It didn't work. But shout out to him, he understands. He turned me on to a couple of venues out here because while I didn't have the New Orleans version of the Reggae Ska Conspiracy, I was starting to get to know musicians out here. Be like, hey, this is what I used to do in New Orleans. Would you be interested in doing some shit like that? Okay, cool. So going into 2006, that's where those Reggae Ska Lafayette show things I was coming from, I was talking about.
Yeah.
So outside of that, I was recording myself. Now, the guy who did the engineering and recording for the compilation album. Before Katrina, he was living around the corner from UNO on Madrid Street in Gentilly.
Right.
When Katrina hit, he evacuated to Atlanta. Okay. The main guy who connected us two together was this trumpet player at UNO.
While he's still in Atlanta, you get connected, or when he returns?
Just going back. No, we was connected already.
Pre-Katrina.
Pre-Katrina was already connected.
Gotcha.
I'd recorded the compilation through his home studio. I do all the stuff of mine and then translate it over to his, drop the verses, all that stuff. So Urban Grooves Compilation Volume 1 is what happened at his home studio. Pre-Katrina in like 2003. When Katrina hit in 2005, the engineer, Joey, the Y, he goes to Atlanta. The guy who connects me and Joy together is this guy named Espionage.
All right.
Now, Jason, real name Jason, we played intramural sports and was in pep band and was in one ensemble together. He was a trumpet player.
Okay.
So we did classical stuff together. You know what I'm saying? They had a year where they had university bands so that people could jump on second instruments. So like I'm a saxophone player, but in university band, I play clarinet.
Nice.
Second instrument type shit. He ended up playing trumpet in both. He's the one who connected in Joey. Well, when Joey goes to Atlanta after Katrina, well, Espionage, he starts going to Atlanta to continue his recording stuff because they have an actual independent label, Reckless Records, REXLESS, Reckless Records.
Okay.
They actually have, like, they produce projects, albums for multiple artists. Joey himself, back in the 90s, he was a member of High Power Records, you know, going back in that independent New Orleans rap days, pre-big deals. You know, so he's going to Atlanta. Well, Espionage obviously knows me and how it gets down musically. He didn't see me do the Reggae Style Conspiracy. He didn't see me in Pep Band. He didn't see me in One Ensemble. He didn't see me singing chamber singers. He knows I do music. Hey, you want to start coming to Atlanta with me for these recording sessions?
Beautiful.
Sure, why not? You mean I get to go to Atlanta virtually for free because we're staying at the dude's house.
Yeah.
We're staying at Joey's house, so it's not no hotels or nothing like that. You'll drive. All I gotta do, I'm gonna provide some gas money for you. You know, we gonna get to go and record some music in another state with people I already know that are weed smokers. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. So I started going every few weeks, every few months to Atlanta with Espionage, and they would be recording their stuff, but Espionage knew I did production, so I started doing production for them in reference towards stuff with Reckless.
Yeah.
In the midst of that, I'm like, well, shoot, since I'm here on basically y'all dime, you know, because Joey and Espionage are like brothers. I don't know if they're officially blood brothers, but they're brothers,
Might
you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So it's all love. Well, while I'm doing production for y'all, I might as well, I got this idea for something I want to do for myself, a song I want to do for myself. And at the time, I know all the music history, what may have you, with the equipment they had, because Joey was an original beat machine type of guy.
Okay.
You know, he's 90s New Orleans.
Are you
beat
finally
machine.
about to be united with a TR-808?
No, because Katrina took that opportunity away.
Damn it.
So when Katrina hit, he switched from beat machines to digital. So
Okay.
he had Cubase
All right.
and a Triton keyboard, Triton synthesizer,
Okay.
which is really right up my alley because
With the MIDI.
cool.
Yep.
So teach me how to use this Triton. Okay, know the Triton with the disc and all that stuff because I grew up with disc floppies, 3.5, whatever.
Yeah.
Cubase, I already know that. I already learning that. Teach me how to use Cubase. It already makes sense to me because I've grown up using Magic Studio, Cakewalk, MIDI, and all that stuff beforehand. And then the main thing is that, okay, y'all have these ideas and stuff. Well, why don't you just sample whatever? Oh, wait, you don't know how to sample on this stuff?
Really?
Well, according to the way that I'm looking at it, what I would do is I'd do this and take this from here because YouTube is a thing now. A year old, but it's a thing now.
All right.
Take this YouTube thing here. If you fill it in through the Triton and then here, I basically taught them how to sample on their shit.
Beautiful.
You know, basically by trial and error from me, going back to the cassette tape days.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So all this stuff is going in cycles. So I teach them how to sample on their equipment. I'm doing production for them. Joey was their main producer. He was their Manny Fresh of their operation.
Sure.
So I'm doing production for them or what may have you. And I'm like, okay, well, I have this idea of this average white band song I want to sample anyway for myself because it's been stuck in my head for the longest, but I never knew how to sample. No access to beat machines.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we figured out how to sample. Well, shoot, let me do this song first as the first sampler thing real quick. So 10:36 p.m. in my discography is that song.
Nice.
Where I sample Soul Searching from Average White Band.
Okay.
Loop it through. What I liked about the Triton was it wasn't just simple loop or whatever. You literally had to play keys to get a little key difference, little speed difference in the synthesizers back then.
Right.
Whatever. So that plays towards my musician sensibilities a little bit. So yeah, I teach them towards that. I'm going out there, I'm doing stuff for them, but I'm also doing stuff for me. So like, I don't know, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m., I'm doing stuff for them. But come 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, everybody went to sleep, I'm up recording stuff for me.
Yeah.
Because ain't nothing else I could do. You know what I'm saying?
Get it done.
I got to get it done. I still want material with my name somewhere on it, and I know I can do it.
Sure.
And if it's not going to be singing, then it might as well be rhyming. So yeah, that's what I did. That's where hip hop moose really kicked in from the artist standpoint. It was post Katrina, going to Atlanta, probably putting stuff down for me, and I started liking it. So when I come back here to Lafayette, now I can talk to all these places. Hey, I want to book myself. I want to do a show. I want to do a hip hop show. You know, start off somewhere like Cafe Cottage, this place here, Artmosphere, when it was the original owners. You know, going downtown to a place like Renaissance, or turn it to Sadie's, going down to Club 307. You know, just that's where the whole thing started. My mid to late 20s, in reference towards like the hip hop frontman.
So you had a body of work to present to be able to secure dates, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and it helped that I'd had the reggae ska conspiracy aspect too, because I would kind of have to backdoor a couple of venues. Because for some of these venues out here, they really wasn't doing hip hop at all before me.
Gotcha.
You know, I ain't trying to take credit what may have you, but it is what it is. Like this place, Cafe Cottage, when they was doing music, the green room that exists now downtown, they were not doing hip hop and rap stuff as far as performance. Of course, they'll play the music, people to dance, whatever, with a DJ or whatever, but they wasn't doing actual performances with actual MCs actually rapping to a DJ, let alone with musicians. You know, so I kind of backdoor them and bring in the Reggae Ska Conspiracy and do a show or two or whatever, and the local independent musicians, I'm getting drunk with them during the week anyway, to where we see each other on stage every weekend.
Plugged in.
Yeah, so now they know I'm a musician, but they also know I got this hip hop thing. So I would backdoor the venues with the Reggae Ska Conspiracy or whatever, or go at somebody else's show and they may invite me on stage, and you know, I'll do some singing and I'll spit a few bars. Yeah. So that the next time I went to the venue, hip hop, solo, me, let's do this. Yeah. And they let me in because they already had experience with me.
Nice. So that's how the Atlanta experiences manifest itself, is backing for your performances?
Well, not backing, just not economically, just material. Because worst case scenario is, if I book myself, well, I need music to perform.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. You know? I mean, that's what you were able to use it for that.
Yeah. I was organizing this slowly for myself. I'd finally decided I was going to do a solo album, what may have you, which was going to be a combination of singing and rhyming, of course, because it's me. Yeah. You know, I come from that era where the concept of singing and rhyming was happening, but it wasn't happening with many males by the time I got to high school. Think about that. I know I'm going back a few years, but I grew up late high school on Missy Elliott and Lauryn Hill, for example. Yeah. Both fire singers, both fire bar spitters. They could drop singing and drop 16s on you anytime. Sure. Solo, Fugees with Sister, whatever. Yeah. They didn't have many male examples except for like a Wyclef. Yeah. You know, during that time period. So I'm thinking I might be formulating a lane for myself here. You know what I'm saying? That can take me places. There aren't that many males that are musicians, singers, and MCs on the same stage.
Let me pause for a second. Let me think. I'm not really sure of the chronology of the birth of conscious rap, if we want to call it that or go there. But what I was going to contribute is that as an art form, hip hop was so much about effrontery and masculinity that I don't think there was a lane for that. There wasn't a space for that where probably was considered economically viable or wanted. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I guess perhaps to explain why there was that void, you know?
It's misogyny. Yeah. It's really what it is. Because like we talked about earlier, there were, when we was talking about the 80s, there were artists there were a couple of artists here and there, like a Bobby Brown, that would be singing and then throw a few bars in. But it's misogynistic in a way to where,
But not the other way around.
Right, exactly. Right. You couldn't have somebody whose quote unquote main thing was rapping
and then
also be a singer. Yeah. That's why the whole thing with Nas laying claim to being one of the first MCs to sing his own hooks, that's why it's so big for him.
Gotcha.
Because what hip hop artists you remember in between 86 and 2000 besides Nas that was literally singing their own hooks?
No. I mean, nothing comes to mind. I'm sure there were, but nothing comes to mind.
Right, there isn't much. Right, right, there isn't much. And I know you know enough about music to be able to come up with somebody if somebody was actually there. You know, so yeah, that time period that I grew up in between elementary school and college was that time period where that gap resided.
Yeah.
You know, so by the time I'm in my 20s, the only experience I had with people was the stuff we talked about in the 80s, and then you're talking about Lauryn Hill, of which I discovered Lauryn Hill as a solo artist before her stuff with the Fugees.
Okay.
You know, I had a bad habit of discovering an act and then going backwards on them. It's that 80s discovery thing we was talking about at the very beginning.
Okay.
Where, you know, okay, first thing about Marvin Gaye for me would be Sexual Healing, and now I got to go back to see
how
let's get on and what's going on.
Streaming's brilliant for that for me, because I'll hear of a band and the first thing I want to hear is their first album before I hear anything else.
Yeah, you know, Michael Jackson was the first thing for me was Off the Wall and Thriller. Well,
right.
I got to go back and figure out the Jackson 5 now.
Sure.
In
different
1987,
world.
88.
Different world.
Yeah, so when it came to like Lauryn Hill and Missy Elliott, they were MCs that also sung, and I was like, I want to do that. Now, I'm not trying to say that I could have became Drake or anything like that.
Yeah, I get it.
But you see what I'm saying about being in between so many things and being like in between the cracks of so many things historically.
Yeah, but at least there was involvement.
Right.
There was tangible physical involvement.
I'm having all these considerations a good 5 to 10 years before Drake was even on Degassi. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, that's where the whole thing was. It was out of plain necessity and being like, well, I'm not just going to neglect the stuff, so I'm gonna go.
Sure.
I'm gonna go do this. And
so it took me places. It enables you to be able to perform.
Yeah.
And are you able to? Because you mentioned, you didn't exactly mention the quantity. Were you able to form an album with the amount of material that you amassed in Atlanta of your own?
Yes and no. Yes and no. From the perspective of, yes, I was able to put enough material together. But no, from that, half to 2/3 of that material, I haven't even really used here today because of the quality of the recording. Because once again, even though I'm up early in the morning recording myself while everybody's asleep, the other side of that coin is the exact same statement. I'm up early in the morning while everybody else is asleep, recording myself. The same issues I had when I had a Jerry curl in the 80s when I was a kid, where I didn't necessarily want to be doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I want to be that team aspect. So some of those things I recorded at the time really didn't work for me. They're still on the shelf now. Like there is material from that time period, from 20 years ago, that I would love to refurbish and formulate into something I'd want to release.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm hoping I could do that in 2025. But once again, we're talking about material from as far back as 2006.
It depends on what you were putting out at the time. I mean, some things are time sensitive and some things are timeless, you know?
Yeah, it's more of the techniques than the actual songs or the music themselves.
I get what you're saying. It could be down to the choice of sounds for the percussion. I mean, that's a dead giveaway. Yeah. And you don't mean to date yourself. But hopefully you got that.
Matter of fact, funny thing. One of my younger friends, another artist that I'm working with, that you probably need to know in the future, FRM Anthony. Mm-hmm. He's from Patterson, but he lives out here in Lafayette. He's 28.
Okay.
I'm 44. He's 28. I'm good friends with him, have you, but that age gap jumps in our conversations all the time. I let him listen to Urban Groove's compilation. Volume 1. Remember that came out in 2003.
Yeah, all right.
Remember that is the closest experience I ever had to a Beat Machine sound, but it was that merge I was telling you about, from Joey to Why having the Beat Machine to having the Triton because of Katrina and what may have you.
Yeah.
And he could tell right away. Oh, he could tell automatically from now. I I can tell automatic. Well,
from humanizing in the timing, from the choice of sounds.
From the choice of sounds. From the choice of sounds.
Okay.
Like I would damn near be better. I would damn near be better off if I had an a cappella version of that album.
Yeah.
Versus because the music sounds it's heavy MIDI. Very heavy MIDI.
It's stuck to the grid.
There's no. Literally dots on the grid, heavy MIDI. Yeah. Magic Studio 3, if you remember that one. No samples, none whatsoever, and very heavy MIDI. Should probably cover everything I'd say about that, but you can tell right off.
Anthony, think about what they do today. They buy a plug-in for $20 and then take what they made, plug it in, and then it's given a popularized sound that's proven.
I ain't gonna lie.
It's 50 settings in a click. You know what I'm saying?
I so wish I'd have had access to that back then.
Yes,
for real.
I mean, look, you went through the paces, and that's necessary to grow and build. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, my arrangements and the way I would have put it together would have been the same.
Yes,
but the end result sound would have been different for me.
What I'm saying is, you put those chords. They got chord packs now that they can buy. You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't have needed all that. I just would want to have a real drum sound, a real guitar sound, a real bass sound. That's all I'd want. I don't need the patterns or the pre-data stuff, and then I'll play that shit in myself. I'm
glad that your avenue was to preserve and pursue the natural instruments, because in my eyes there can never be enough.
Right.
What was just out of curiosity, the subject matter of the lyrics over that, in general?
For me?
Yeah.
Real life type stuff. Okay. One of the things I tell people is that I feel like I grew up like a middle class Huxtable.
Okay.
Where we wasn't poor, but we wasn't rich. Mm-hmm. So therefore, all those types of elements I don't know nothing about no street shit to write about it or to rap about it.
Right.
I don't know nothing about it. Like my real life and my music experiences were tightly resembling that Motown and Stax and New Wave stuff that I was talking about. So that would be the type of things, what the terminology people use today for the type of MC that I could be considered would be the lyrical miracles.
Explain that one. Huh?
That's the ones who, in a stereotypical sense, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you how it gets down. In a stereotypical sense, it's mostly, how you have your white rappers, your white MCs, and they rap it so fast and all the way like that, and they use all kinds of syllables, da 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 da. But that's what they call lyrical miracles, because they use so many. They use double and triple and quadruple entendres and big syllables, and they're all rapping fast and yada yada yada. The thing you brought up earlier about the conscious-minded hip-hop type of stuff would venture into that type of thing. Maybe they're not rapping as fast.
Yeah.
But that's the type of thing like what they thought Eminem was going to be originally.
Okay.
What they think an artist like Logic is now.
Yeah.
Or just motherfuckers like that. Like people who, I don't know about them, but I can't help it. If I'm a lyrical miracle, then that's what I am. Once again, mother with a master's in English.
Okay. You're a victim of enunciations.
High school teacher and high school guidance counselor from like 1978 to 2015. Okay, so yeah, I can't help it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't even sound like I'm from here, because of that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm going to use syllables towards it. That same naval R&B singing friend of mine told me one time, like 20-something years ago, like the only people that's gonna understand the stuff I say when I'm rhyming are doctors. All right, as long as they spending their money to just listen and pay for my shit, okay, let it be them.
Yeah.
Whatever. You know what I'm saying? They actually have money, so why would that be a problem?
It's not common, but it happens.
Who
was that? You mentioned Wu-Tang earlier, isn't it? You God? He went on to speak at Harvard. He's got books out and all this other stuff.
Yeah. See, for them, for instance, they grew up in the proverbial hood in Long Island, Staten Island, and all that stuff. They grew up in that stereotypical hip hop experience. I didn't.
Yeah. Well,
I'm suburban New Iberia.
Right. Typical influences of hip hop are urban and from the point of deficit, whereas higher education is not. So that's why it's the anomaly, when you get down to it.
Right.
So what do we see you doing today with all of these elements that you've kind of in your attaché, so to speak, you know, over time? Are you able to still make use of all of these different experiences?
I'm still trying to figure out ways to to be even more busy than I am.
Yeah.
I'm still an artist with a discography. I just had the album Shadows, Prayers, and Music came out earlier this year in April. Shadows, Prayers, and Music.
Okay.
SPAM, SPAM.
Shadows, Prayers, and Music.
Shadows, Prayers, and Music. It came out earlier this year. The actual latest, chronologically, the two latest things that I've added to my repertoire is actually being a DJ now. Because I wasn't even a DJ when I started the radio stuff back with my radio show. Well, man, I wasn't an actual DJ. But I was a radio guy from that childhood experience.
Yeah.
I wasn't a DJ. So I actually, you know, I can actually DJ somewhat, what may have you. And the other thing that's most recently chronologically is poetry. Because once again, I can always put lines and bars together, but I also always thought about it from a singing and emceeing standpoint. So now I have poetry friends here in Lafayette, and one of the main poetry people out here, Poetic Soul, I had been knowing her for a few years. She had been doing the poetry thing like I had been doing the hip hop thing out here, facilitating events, booking, whatever.
Yeah.
And she just came up to me one day in like 2019 and was like, you ought to do poetry because your bars are dope. Okay, she happens to be one of the people that's actually listening to what the fuck I'm saying and not just the music. All right, well, I'm gonna go check it out. Well, first time I got on stage here in Lafayette for her monthly poetry slam. She has a monthly poetry slam. She'll get judges out of the audience, you know, 30-point system. I don't know how much you know about poetry slamming or what may have you, but it's basically rap battles, but one person at a time.
Sure.
Basically.
Yeah.
The first time I stepped on stage for poetry and spit my bars for my song Unorthodox, they gave me a perfect 30.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna stick on to this too then a little bit. So I've included that towards it. You know, I spent the last 12 years being in stagehand and production in reference towards working with companies and literally building the concert stages and the lighting and the sound for stuff that's at the Superdome, the Smoothie King Center, and the Cajun Dome, and Raising Cane's in Baton Rouge,
nice.
And what used to be CenturyLink in Shreveport. I don't know what it's called now. A few other places. Yeah, that's like I said, I've had my radio show Urban Flow SARS that I've had syndicated out on FM radio and internet radio since 2010.
Nice.
So once again, playing my stuff and other people's stuff like I was when I was a kid. I've been facilitated hip hop events in 6-7 different states. Right. In the last few years, and I'm proud to say that as an artist, I've probably performed in about 15 states at this particular point. Beautiful. You know, within the last few years. So everything I wanted to try to figure out as a kid, I'm still trying to do and figure out here as a middle-aged adult.
Yeah, well, it's a journey in itself, right? I mean, that's where the bread and butter is. That's right. You know, that's the best part of it, at least for me.
I will never be able to understand how people were able to, like, whatever they thought about doing as a kid or in grade school or what may have you. I never understood the people that had the ability of putting that to the side and going do something else. Yeah. Because, for instance, like, before we started recording, you was mentioning some of that too with the whole boat captain situation. Yeah. It's not necessarily, I don't really know you like that, but I don't think it was something that you was, you know, oh, that's what I want to be when I grow up. No. But it's the thing that's getting you to point A to where you still have all this music stuff here on the side. Unfortunately, I'm not the type of person that could do that. Yeah. Like the last time I had an official 9-to-5 job that didn't involve me professional freelancing, I was 29 years old. Wow. I'm 44 now. Good for you, dude. Good for you. I can't say it's always been a happy ending, but that's what I'm doing. Yeah. You know, and it's me doing it, so yeah, that's what I'm gonna continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, speaking honestly, I think me becoming a boat captain was just more hard-headedness because it was like, you know, all right, motherfucker, I'll scrub this toilet for you now, but one day I'm gonna beat you. You know,
I feel you on that.
The endurance, right. You know,
I feel you on that.
Pays the bills. Trust me, I wish Neworleansmusicians.com was profitable. I mean, I keep it free for everybody because I don't need to charge. But I mean, right. if I could profit from it, then I would certainly quit my day job, so to speak. You know.
I feel you on that. I understand. Yeah. I've gotten to the point to where my day job is my night job. and vice versa.
Awesome,
so that's what I do. I do the stagehand stuff. I do all my musical stuff, and then for the last 25, 26 years, I've been a beer man at events. You know, I started selling beer at Saints games back in '99.
Oh shit!
You know, and I've gotten actually kind of a little bit popular with that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, fans start recognizing me at various events, and then they start recognizing me outside the event.
Beautiful.
You know,
yeah.
I started doing that here in Lafayette. Let's see, this would be my 4th year of doing it here in Lafayette as a beer man.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's gotten to the point where I'll be hanging out somewhere here in Lafayette and be like, "Say, ain't you the guy who sells beer?" "Yeah, that's me." That's
you
cool.
Bring the gifts.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. And somehow or another, I can tie it in towards, you know, because I wear my Moose Harris emblem all the time too, and I tie that in. Like, I've gotten kids that have come up to me. I may mention matter of factly, "Yeah, I do music. Go look up Moose Harris."
Yeah.
And then they'll come back to me 2 games later or whatever, you know, during the baseball season, and be like, "Oh, I'm so following you on Spotify." They tell their friend, "That's a dude who makes music too." Like,
I'm glad you said that, man. I
happens.
wanted you to run down where they can find all of your work.
Oh, everywhere. I have an amp link. Is ampl.ink/J4VA capital P, but we can skip all that.
Roger.
Just Google Moose Harris.
Okay.
You know, it's on Spotify and Apple and Tidal, and I have a Bandcamp page, mooseharris.bandcamp.com. Check that out first. The Bandcamp page, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Tidal, iHeartRadio, all the basic major streaming American sites all have them, and that's had it for the last 6 years. You know, the Bandcamp page is available. I do have an online store under a cat named Moose through Spring.
Okay.
So that's where all the shirts and the coffee mugs and the cell phone cases and the bucket hats and the hoodies and all that stuff. Yeah, it's Teespring. Well, Teespring has shortened themselves to Spring.
Oh, I didn't know.
I still like to use Teespring because most people know it that way.
That's the one to click with me.
But yeah, it's under a cat named Moose under Teespring or Spring.
Okay.
I got all kinds of stuff there. The Bandcamp page has discography, a couple of the DJ mixes that I've actually done for a couple of DJ coalitions I'm a part of. Shout out to the 18 DJs out of Arkansas.
Nice.
You know, so I've done a couple of that with them.
Yeah.
That's available on my Bandcamp. Remixes. Up until a few years ago, I actually had that original album where I was saying that I was getting all the material in Atlanta for.
Yeah.
I actually had the original material, the original album, which was called Unorthodox.
All right.
But I was like, nah, I flipped most of that album towards the anthologies that I have.
Okay.
On there. So you know, a 10:36 p.m. or the Waiting Game remix or that was all stuff that was supposed to be on Unorthodox, but
Gotcha.
I pushed it back towards the later release, a decade, 12 years later.
That's awesome.
Whatever the case is. But yeah, it like I said, you just Google Moose Harris, Anthony B. Daniels, I'll be there.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your time, man.
No problem, man.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Oh, look at all these buttons. Give me some of this. And, oh, hey, look at that. I like that one, too. That's nice. And thumbs up, everybody. I want everybody to have a thumb. And I like sharing.